Greetings and bienvenue, Midnight Crew. Thank you for returning to this broadcast. And welcome to new viewers joining us for the first time. If you like a video, then feel free to subscribe.
Has anyone ever seen any shadow people? If you did, what did you see? Just dark figures, red eyes, maybe yellow eyes. The one I saw had a pure white face and black eyes. Other than looking as scary as hell, it didn't seem harmful. Just kept staring at me for a few minutes before disappearing. Not really sure if that was its real face or a mask it was wearing. It didn't change its facial expression, so I'm thinking it may have been a mask.
So, I've got a story that happened back in 2010, and right after I moved out of the house, I actually submitted the story, photos and other witness accounts in its full entirety to /x/, but it's been many years since then, and I highly doubt anyone here, especially not the small amount of people just on this thread currently, would recall any of it. But it is quite relevant, probably, so I'll share the rundown. A girlfriend of mine and a few friends decided to all get a place together, and we found a nice house for rent that was pretty cheap, despite the nice neighborhood it was located in. We met with the owners of the property, and a few weeks later we all moved in. Everything was really great for a while. Little did we know eventually things were going to get pretty weird. At first it was stuff like our dog being scared shitless of the long hallway. It simply wouldn't go down that hallway unless you walked right down it with him, and he would whine the whole time. It took him months to finally get over it, but the same behavior repeated again when we got a new dog about 5 months into living in this place. After a while, my roommate started complaining about hearing shit at night, and little things out of the ordinary, such as things being moved or bad feelings in the house. Me being of complete skeptical mind, and living my whole life by the moral creed of logic and reasoning, chalked it up to my roommates being assholes and the pipes were clanking, etc. It wasn't too long, however, until I found myself home alone one day, and all the creepy shit really began. So my girlfriend and myself were home alone one day while the others were at work, and we hear something fall in the house. Sounds like the hall bathroom to me. She thinks it's one of the bedrooms. I go to check the bathroom and see nothing really amiss. She, however, goes across the hall from me and tries to open our roommate's door, and she starts to freak out. She can twist the knob, but cannot open the door, and she thinks someone is holding it closed on the other side. I come up behind her and try as well. The door doesn't budge much. I shout that if someone is there, they should tell me now, because regardless I'm coming into the room, a small door won't stop me. 6 foot 5 inches tall, weighing about 250 pounds, a tiny prefab door won't really keep me out. Nobody replies, and so I try again to open it. I get a little more budge, and it feels like it's being held at the bottom. So I wiggle it around more, and eventually I feel the door dislodge something, finally getting my head through the crack. I can see it's a hanging mirror that had been there when we got the place. It had previously been drilled into the wall about a foot off the ground, and it had seemingly come undone, and fell, slid about 4 feet and perfectly wedged the door closed. It was sure odd considering I still can't really picture how the mirror could get over there, be face up, and have all the screws in it still. But I chalked it up to the cosmic lottery of probability, and thought nothing of it. Later that day after my girlfriend goes to work, I hear my car locking and unlocking itself, and I think I must be sitting on my key fob. I look and don't find it, and happen to see it on my desk. And as soon as I look at the fob, the car locks itself again. I can hear the honk and see the lights flash through my dining room window. I think my fob must need new batteries. The fob never got those batteries replaced though, and it worked just fine before and since until the car was literally set on fire and junked a few years ago. After this went on, all of which didn't even at the time strike me as odd. I took a shower to get ready for lunch with a buddy of mine. Once I was out and drying off, I could hear my water still flowing. All the pipes were loud and they all ran off the same line. Thus you could hear them from any of the bathrooms or kitchen. And thinking someone was home, I toweled off a bit and went out. Once out, I heard my kitchen sink going full blast. I called out, but was met with silence. As soon as I approached the corner to turn into the kitchen, the water stopped hard, like I could hear the valve ka-thunk into place as the faucet shut off. Rounding into the kitchen, there was water in my sink and some had splashed onto the floor. I thought the plumbing was fucked or the shower backed up somehow. In hindsight, gravity and things tell me this is highly unlikely since other bath faucets were seated much lower than the kitchen sink. I thought it was odd, but in a rush I turned around to walk to the room to get dressed. Walking back to the room, I got 5 feet from my room door, and it just slammed in my face. At this point, I pretty much lost a bit of my skepticism. From here on out, very strange things happened in the house, almost more often than not while I was around, though many times with multiple people seeing things too. Unexplained sounds, glasses shattering, doorknobs turning by themselves, just way more things than can be listed here, unless someone really wants it. But then, the entity shows up. One day just before our lease was coming up, it was 8 p.m. and I'm outside with the 2 dogs. My girlfriend was home, and I had just got off the phone with another roommate discussing future living arrangements. So I'm watching the dogs do what dogs do, and it's a nice enough evening outside. Sun has been down for about an hour or so, and I hear this sound, like a leaf scraping the pine needles. Nothing out of the ordinary, but it has the effect of a dead leaf scraping asphalt. Just enough noise that you turn and look at it. Now when I turn and I look at this sound, it had come from the corner of my fence. And there in the corner, right up perfectly where the edges meet, there is a figure. Maybe a little shorter than me, and we're only about 40 feet apart. I cannot make out a face or really anything, but it kind of looks like a man in hoodie had hopped my fence and was just standing there. I thought it was burglar or something, so I back up slowly on my porch and call for the dogs to go inside. Contrary to everything I've heard, the dogs did not even act like this thing existed at all whatsoever, just walked around and never noticed it. Either that or they were treating it like it was a person they had seen quite often before and were not put off by. And as the dogs go in, I walk backwards the whole time and step inside the threshold of the house, never taking my eyes off the figure. The entire time. As I shut the door has 9 window panes in it, 3 by 3, making up the majority of the back door, and we keep a curtain over it to block out the morning sun. I pull the door curtain back to grab the deadbolt to lock, and as soon as I pull the curtain aside, I'm greeted by the figure no more than 2 feet away from the door on the other side, standing on the porch. I didn't know how it moved roughly 200 feet in less than a full second of time. I'd gone into protect my house mode by this time, so I do the dumbest thing I can, stand and wait. I flick the porch light on and am just standing there watching it. I noticed a few things. The first and most apparent thing is that what I'm staring at has no apparent features. None. It's roughly humanoid, with the basic shape of a person, but there is no muscle definition. There is no face. There are no fingers, no toes, no clothes. The head is more like a blob hood on top of a body, and the whole thing is flat matte black, solid as concrete. Looked like a statue. The second thing I become aware of after a few moments staring is there is no respiration. In fact, there is no movement of any kind. To this day, I have never seen it move. I stared at it through my window for what seems like forever, but in reality was still probably 30 full seconds. Behind the curtain, I reached my arm out to grab a large knife off the top of the dog kennel, and as I let the curtain finally fall, I unsheathed the knife and jumped a bit back from the door, waiting for it to come crashing in. It did not. I was a little shook up about it, but my normal reaction to all the weird shit that ever happened has been anger. I don't meet creepy situations with a scared response or run away. I run into danger and tend to become violent at these actions. In any case, though, I didn't like seeing this thing at my house but couldn't bring myself to tell the girlfriend. I ended up leaving and going to the store. Later that night at almost 4 a.m., while I was going to bed, I was walking down the long hall and stopped in front of my door. I looked down the hall to our front door to watch as I clicked the lights off, and there it was, standing in front of my front door. Same pose, no motion, just standing. It's perfectly stillness. I flicked the light on and off to try and dispel it, but nothing happened. It just stayed put. I noped open my door and slid into my room, jumped into bed, and waited with a gun in my hand all night till the sun rose before finally passing out. I wish that was the last time, but it's not. Apart from that incident and after moving houses, I've seen it in 3 different homes now, and one time around Christmas last year, a buddy of mine and myself had gone out for a smoke, and he motions over to a house on the bend, saying, "Hey man, is that a guy over there?" And sure enough, it appears to be a silhouette of a man up near the house. It's so convincing that I even called out to it and started to approach it. Maybe halfway to it when I eventually decided it probably was not a man, but just a weird trick of the street lighting on the house. However, about 10 minutes later, we look over and realize that the shadow is no longer there. But we had never seen anyone move away or down the road or anything. He'd heard some of the stories before, and he became much more freaked out than I was, as he was positive he's now seen this thing that has seemingly followed me for over 5 years now. Not quite sure if it's what constitutes a classical shadow person, but it's as close as I have to some form of account with it. Thing is, it always felt bad for me. Like all the events happening at that old house were always things that were by design meant to mess with your head, and the house always had this sterile feeling to it, like you were the dirt and it was trying to cleanse the place. Anyways, thanks for listening, and I guess I'll answer questions if anyone has any.
Have you ever tried to communicate with it? Or ask it what it wants?
I haven't asked it what it wants or anything. The one night last Christmas I did try calling out at it thinking it was a person, but nothing. All the little things that happened in the house, though, were like I said, all mind games. Like I would do things and then after it hooked you, it would start to do the things that you were thinking about it maybe doing. Like, shit, wait, I forgot to lock the door to the garage. Maybe it could get in there, shit, I forgot. 20 minutes after it had been twisting the other doorknobs, and only then once you remembered that last door and were running over to lock it, that handle would slowly start turning in front of you. Things like that. I've never felt like it was friendly at all.
There is this thing that runs in the family where every second male is able to see when people die. I have it, my granddad has it. I never really understood what it was or how, but basically before someone dies, they get this dark shade about them. My grandmother once got a cold and everyone said she was fine. My granddad and I knew different, but we didn't want to scare anyone, so we just let her slip by. You can't prevent it. Once I saw it on my friend and tried explaining it to him. He said he was going to go on a camp but got really scared when I told him so he stayed home. He was hit by a truck that Saturday. Basically, for years I was never able to describe what it looked like. But a few nights ago, I was driving home from work and saw a car crash. One girl was going crazy on the phone, freaking out, and some guy was laying on the ground all spread out and shit with the shade around him. I stopped my car and got out, rushing over to try to help him, CPR and first aid certified. But just when I got about a meter away from him, the shade separated himself from his body and stood up, turned to me, and slowly faded into the dark of the night. I just stood there stunned, and soon realized the girl was screaming at me to try to help him. I was in such disbelief that I just turned to her with eyes wide and told her coldly, "He left." I swear to God it just stood up and looked at me.
I have only ever for certain seen one once, and it's a bit of a story, so bear with me. My family, having opted to stay home from the usual Thanksgiving festivities my extended family generally threw, were surprised when we were contacted and told my grandmother had suffered a sudden, severe stroke. My mother and I immediately flew up the next day to see her, as we weren't sure she'd ever recover. Her brain bleeding had slowed, but wasn't stopping. We got there and spent pretty much the entire remainder of the day and a good chunk of the night at the hospital. We did eventually head back to the hotel, and both of us pretty much passed out as soon as we got settled into bed. But about halfway through the night, around 3-ish or so, I woke up and heard my mother muttering. I called out to her, told her to stop it, but no luck. When I stopped and listened, it was strange, not quite normal muttering, but more like she was growling and gnashing her teeth and snarling very quietly in her sleep. I turned and slid about halfway out of bed, one foot on the floor, so I could reach across the gap between our beds and poke and shake her, because she would not stop making that horrible sound. Frankly, it was starting to freak me out. She wouldn't wake up at all either. I got frustrated and started to pull myself into bed when I saw something move out of the right corner of my vision. I froze and looked over, and watched the black figure just glide across the room at the foot of our beds and stop between them, as if watching her, or maybe both of us. It had no features. It was just a head, shoulders, and then went straight down to the floor in an inky blackness that set it apart from all the regular dark spots in the room. I watched it, and even though it was very clearly something that did not belong in our room, I didn't feel afraid, though I was interested in why it was there. After a while, with it just standing there, I started to get a little defensive feeling. I pulled myself up into the bed and, remembering what a friend had said once about the best defense against things like this, began to mentally put up a shield of sorts. When I did this, it seemed startled and suddenly bolted into the stream of light coming in from behind the curtains. It got about 5 feet away from the window and just disappeared. By this time, my mother had gone quiet and was sleeping normally again. I laid back, tried to make sense of what I'd just seen and couldn't. So I simply curled up and did my best to go back to sleep. I tried telling my mom about it the next day, but she sort of shrugged it off. I don't blame her. She had other things on her mind. One interesting thing that I found out later was that we were in the room right next to where my grandmother had been staying when she had the stroke. An odd coincidence. We ended up staying there for a week and a half. Those memories are hazy. The days all blended together. My grandmother was moved into hospice, and then, peacefully, passed away. When I had time to think about it, I came up with no other reason for that thing to have been there, other than it had followed us there from the hospital. And I've never seen anything quite as well formed or intelligent since. Just little things here and there like anyone else, though my significant other has seen several odd things in our house.
I've got 3 stories, 2 of which are related, but not be outright shadow people. I could vaguely identify colors and shapes, but are pretty similar. Be 9 or 10, always have to sleep with the door cracked open, wake up in the middle of the night, bed has a full view of the door, see general shape of person, no color or features, just the shape, shadow from the light it's blocking. Assume it's father, maybe peeking in to check on me. Wake up more, mind clearing. Realize it's too tall to be my dad. He's around 6 feet. This thing is closer to 6'6" or 7 feet. Head reaches top of the doorway. 2 red dots where there should be eyes. I can faintly see the banister and wall through the body. It's not moving, changing, or doing anything. Don't know what to do. Pull covers overhead, fall back asleep for a bit, wake up. It's not there. Ask Dad in the morning if he went by to check on me at night, just in case. Says he didn't. Oh well. .png. Hiking with my fiancé. Nothing really happens, just normal forest voices. Arrive at the cabin of my relatives, use it for the night. Can't sleep, eerie feeling of being watched. Go outside for a cigarette. See a man walking on the trail. Expect him to walk to me. He darts on the trail from left to right. I don't see leg movement at all, just that he moves from one side to the other. I try to make contact with him by talking. No answer. I think it's a shy but creepy hiker. Go inside. Make some tea if the guy is thirsty. Wait for 15 minutes. Should have come inside by now. Go back to the door. Open it. See a man dart from the doorstep back to the wilderness. Nope. JPG the hell out. Lock the door. Check windows. Hours go by. Still can't sleep. Get that eerie feeling again. Check the door window. That guy's again on the doorstep. Sit by the kitchen table all night. The man leaves as the day gets lighter. I was scared shitless. Not quite my experience. Where was this, by the way? Out in Ireland. Nice wood area and lots of open land. Slight distance from a farm, a figure like a moving shadow, all black but with an outline. Stare and freeze in fear. Walks by. Appears to notice me. The shadow freezes. Moves away with frightening speed.
My very first experience was when I was about 14 years old. I was hanging out at my friend's house and we had just woken up from a sleepover. I was about to go home. When I was 14, my parents were separated and it was my mom's week to have me. My mom lived in a different neighborhood. My dad lived in the same neighborhood as my friend. I walked to my dad's house to get some sketchbooks that I had left at his house. I wanted to bring them to my mom's house. I went up to the side door of my dad's house to unlock the door, went inside, went up to my room, and grabbed my book. As I went down the stairs, I just got this sudden feeling of dread and sorrow. I was about 5 steps from the ground and I looked at the wall where the side door led outside. There was a window maybe 2 feet to the right of the door, but in between that was just a wall. But at that second I saw a huge black shadow move as if it were walking. It looked more like a reflection of someone walking on the other side of the kitchen, so I looked over and there was nothing there. I looked back at the wall. The shadow was just standing there. I sprinted out the door and locked it. I could never be in that house alone again. My second experience occurred at my mom's apartment when I was probably in 8th grade or so. This experience ties into 2 different things, so I'll give the whole story. When we were going to get the apartment, we wanted to know the history of the building, because they told us we would have to wait a week to be able to go in. They had to repaint the whole apartment and lay new carpet down. Legally, you have to supply information on the history, but they refused to tell us why they had to change everything out. The building was not that old either. It was maybe 10 years old, a very nice apartment complex. So on that note, we moved into the apartment, and a few months later, my mom was alone in the apartment when I was at my dad's house. She called freaking out and told me. I was laying facing the bathroom and I opened my eyes and saw a little girl in a nightgown sitting on the edge of my bed. She got up and walked into my bathroom and disappeared. I'm so scared. I thought that was pretty freaky since she was alone. Then a few weeks later, I was home with my brother after school and I was in his room talking to him and went to go into my bedroom on the other side of the apartment. While I was walking through the hallway, I looked at one of the pictures hanging on the wall. You could see the reflection on the glass of the edge of my mom's bed. I only saw a quick glance of it since I was walking, but I saw a man in all black sitting on the edge of her bed. Then I walked backwards and looked at the picture frame again and saw him standing at the door. He was wearing an all-black tuxedo and had a blacked-out face with bright white eyes. I turned around very fast and nothing was there. I ran into my bedroom and didn't come out until my mom came home.
Once you know of them, they're not too spooky. I've never met a shadow person who is ill-tempered, hostile, or dangerous. Once you've seen enough of them, like myself, you realize they aren't a threat. I guess, to start. 8-ish, in my first house as a child. The fireplace mantel had 2 candlesticks on either side, with pictures of my family in between. Just woke up to go to the restroom. Walk out to the living room to get a drink of water, or pop, I don't know. See shadowy, wispy tendrils wrapped around one of the candlesticks. As my eyes focus, the shadows dissipate. I was young, so it affected me a bit more. The light disappeared behind the blackness of the fingers, but as I grew older, I understood a bit more of what they were, so remembering back, I was just silly.
So I know /X/ is known for a lot of role-playing and stuff, but if you guys are being serious, can you please tell me what happened after you saw the shadow people? Like if I saw one, I would literally be telling everyone, like running down the streets, holy shit, there was a shadow person in my room, or something like that. What did you guys do? How can you sleep at night knowing there's a whole other dimension of beings out there that we're unaware of?
I just don't think anyone important, like the government or reputable scientists, would actually take me seriously or believe me. If they found out I wasn't lying, they'd probably just assume I was hallucinating. Nobody tends to believe anything without verifiable proof. As far as how I sleep at night, what else am I supposed to do? As I already stated, nobody important is going to believe me, and there's nothing that I can do about it on my own. I might as well just move on with my life.
I told my grandmother. She said it was nothing. When I persisted, she snapped at me and called me a liar. Mom used to have similar visions in that room, but since she turned out poorly, my grandmother was afraid I was going down the same path. I shut up and dealt with it myself.
I think maybe we also look like shadow people to them. The golden rule would seem to suggest we act calmly and politely. How long could 2 slightly out-of-phase Earths exist side by side before scientists discovered a way to prove that in a laboratory? Until such a time, the only reports would come from startled people and folklore.
I see what you're saying, but that doesn't change the fact that my reality would be permanently altered in some way, shape, or form, to the degree that I would want people to know there's a whole other world out there and we gotta find out how to bridge the gap, or be cautious or friendly, IDK. Maybe I just have a disposition for sounding like a nutter. But if I ever saw something like that with my own eyes, they would probably lock me up.
That's why I trust shadow people more than fully visible people. Once you see them, they're the only ones you can really talk to about this sort of thing. And of course other shadow seers.
What do you mean, you've talked to them? I literally know nothing about these people, so if you're willing to share your experience, I'm listening.
Oh no, not exactly. I took a bit of creative license there. I was speaking hypothetically, that if I did ever spot a shadow person long enough to chat, I would feel more comfortable doing that than most conversations I have with sheeple. The reason being, I've personally experienced enough paranormal events in my life that I know for a certainty that there's other visitors like shadow people. In every conversation I have now, I need to watch the way I speak so as not to give away the fact that I'm aware of Xenos and such. At the same time, I recognize that even if I did have incontrovertible evidence, I wouldn't share it because there's still a significant portion of the population that would rather not know. It's all really peaceful and nice. The worst horrors come from our own species, but it can be humbling.
I saw them a couple of times. Let me Greentext my first encounter with them. I was 18. I was pretty depressed back in the day, and I was really tired because of the university stuff. I went to sleep very early. In my dream, I see 7, 8 shadows around my bed. They didn't have any eye or face. I was still so calm. Shortly after, a woman in black appeared. She had parchment papers in her hand. I started chanting, "The mother of the faceless ones, the mother of the faceless ones." Then she took one of her parchments and started doing something. I can't quite remember what she did. But afterwards, they disappeared with a weird white light. Light came out of the window and went off in a second. I woke up. I was lying in the same position as in my dream. I got nervous. Got out of the house to get some fresh air. Couldn't see anything more this night. But afterwards, I started seeing them in my normal life. If someone knows what this dream means, please let me know.
The theory is that they are an alternate Earth, and someone here suggested we might look like shadows to them as well. Here's a crazy thought. What if the girl you saw was a girl who had learned to bridge the gap? She is from the other Earth, but has learned how to project herself as a human. The other shadows are people in her cult, her followers, who call her mother of the faceless ones. But to them, you are a faceless one. They call her that because she can cross over completely to our world, instead of just partially. So she is getting closer to us, the faceless ones, to them, than the other shadows. I don't know if that made sense. I have not had much sleep, but that is my theory. I think what you encountered was the other Earth equivalent of us. They see shadows too, but to the rest of the world, they're crazies. So those people banded together and hang out, or they're all friends or something. And that girl is a lot more in tune with us than the rest of the shadows, since she can see us as non-shadows, and we can see her as a non-shadow. It's like seeing someone through a cloth on a clothing line. We see their silhouette. We think they're the ones that are the silhouette, but to them, we're the silhouette. To the mother of the faceless ones, she can see that we're all human, on both Earths, on both sides of the dimensions.
I really don't know. I just saw them a couple of times and I thought that I was the only one who was experiencing it. After that dream, I started calling them the faceless ones. I didn't even know a lot of people had seen them. Also, they literally don't have a face. They are just shadows. Just imagine your shadow is walking freely and it's in a human shape completely. This is how they looked. They are not doing any harm to people, they are just standing and watching. At least I think they are watching because they don't have any eyes either. So you can't tell if they are watching or not. I also don't know who that woman was. She was like in her late 20s, long dark-haired, wearing a black dress, and I can't remember her face that much, but as far as I remember, she was beautiful.
My first memory of a manifestation was one particularly creepy, whose head seemed to be an oblong wicker ball. It was bent over my bed as I awoke, as someone else here also has. Can you relate to that? The manifestations were never malicious, although, regardless, they always left me feeling uneasy. They never have had eyes, always simple black silhouettes. Other hallucinations were in color. Only one has told me their name, and for the sake of anonymity, I will not post it here. There are people I've told this to who may visit /x/. I heard crowds of people, yelling, talking, whispering, as crowds do. Picking the conversations apart, you could learn much. Colors run and swirl, everything melts and drips, not just walls and floors. Can you relate to this? I am diagnosed with schizophrenia and bipolar 1. If you can relate to my words, you are ill in the head. I was only released from asylum last Friday. Just now snapped off the chaplain too, as I've been bedridden withdrawing from Seroquel and risperidone. I will not take these because they are poison. Do not take them, they'll kill you.
You had visual hallucinations with schizophrenia? That's uncommon but cool. You must really be off your rocker. As a friend, I advise you to please take your meds. SSRIs, chlorpromazine, thorazine, whatever it is, you must take it because it will definitely help you. I know it feels like you're not yourself, but it'll help you to regulate your chemical imbalances and not hurt yourself or hurt others. At least you're aware that you are ill in the head, so you know that what the doctors are doing is trying to help you.
I hope that you enjoyed tonight's broadcast. If you enjoyed tonight's story, then please subscribe to the channel as more Greentext will appear daily. A new broadcast will appear when the clock strikes midnight Central Time.
Remember to check the Odyssey and Rumble pages for separate archives of previous broadcasts.